Some modernists responded to modernity by celebrating the machine age. Others excelled in the ridiculous, as did Dadaists. Still others explored scientific approaches to color, form, and perception with synchronism. Paradoxically, many of the modernist painters rejected the modernist ideas and might even be called anti-modern. Some artists even tried to lift people out of urbanization, industry, and commercialization to a more spiritual understanding of life. Even if abstraction and realism can both be found in modernism, American modernism is unified by a conscious search for identity. What did it mean to be American? What did it mean to be modern? Georgia O'Keeffe was born in 1887 in Wisconsin and died in 1986. She was married to the photographer Alfred Stieglitz and moved to New Mexico after her husband's death. There, she was inspired by landscape to create numerous well-known paintings. Synchronism, founded in 1912. Synchronism was an art movement based on the idea that we can combine sound and colors. The synchronists believed that painting in color scales could evoke sensations that were very musical in nature. We usually find the central point, which burst out with color. Dadaism, founded in 1916. Dadaism was a form of artistic anarchy that arose from disgust for the social, political, and cultural values of the time. Elements of art, music, poetry, theater, dance, and politics can be found in this movement. Dada was more a protest movement with an anti-establishment manifesto than a style of art. Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance is a blossoming of the African-American culture, which embraces literary, musical, theatrical, and visual arts. The Harlem Renaissance has two main goals. Firstly, they want to break the white stereotypes about black people. Secondly, they want to break free of Victorian moral values and bourgeois shame about aspects of their lives. Harlem attracted a remarkable concentration of intellect and talent and served as the symbolic capital of this cultural awakening. Aaron Douglas. Aaron Douglas was born in 1899 in Topeka, Kansas, and died in 1979. He is sometimes referred as the father of Black American arts. Abstract Expressionism and the New York School. This movement grew up in New York in the 40s and 90s. Abstract Expressionism is an expressive art form that contains profound emotions and universal themes. It was inspired by Surrealism, which was adapted to the post-war mood of anxiety and trauma. Mark Rothko was born in 1903 in the Russian Empire. In 1913, his family immigrated to the US and he died in 1970 in New York. Mark Rothko was influenced by mythology and philosophy. He insisted on his art being filled with content and rhyming with ideas. He had strong social revolutionary ideas and supported artists' total freedom of expression, which he felt was compromised by the market. Jackson Pollock was an American painter who was born in 1912 and died in 1956 in New York. In 1939, Pollock began treating his alcoholism and was encouraged by his analyst to create drawings. His paintings was not only an outpouring of his own mind, but a reflection of the terror of modern humanity living in the shadow of nuclear war. Pollock developed one of the most radical abstract styles in the history of modern art. He detached line from color, redefined drawing and painting, and found new means to describe pictorial space.
Sculpture. Ibram Lashaw was born in 1930 in Egypt. He later emigrated to New York in 1921. Ibram Lashaw was one of America's first abstract sculptors and took inspiration from Surrealism, Constructivism, and Cubism. He died in 2003 in East Hampton. Lassaud wanted to give free rein to the audience's imagination. They were free of interpreting what his works meant. David Smith was born in 1906 in Indiana and died in 1965 in Vermont, and was the first to work with reeded metal. He was also inspired by Surrealism, Constructivism, and Cubism, and managed to convey in sculpture the abstract expressionism that can be found in painting.
Photography. At the beginning of the century, photography was not recognized as an art form. Indeed, artists thought that something which was machine-made could not be viewed as art. However, photography as an art form was on the rise. Photosecession and pictorialism. Alfred Stieglitz was born in 1864 in Hoboken. He began to photograph while he was a student in Berlin in the 1880s. When he returned to the US in 1890, he began to advocate that photography should be treated as an art. In 1902, he formed the Photosecession, an organization of photographers committed to establishing the artistic merit of photography. He died in 1946. He was influenced by the works of Paul Cézanne, Henri Matisse, Pablo Picasso, and Constantin Brancusi. The main style of the Photosecession movement was pictorialism, which was known for modifying photos with soft focus, special filters, or printing processes. Straight photography. In contrast to the pictorialism, the straight photography movement rejects any kind of manipulation in the photographic process. The photographers wanted to look as objective as possible. Ansel Adams was born in San Francisco in 1902 and died in 1984. In 1932, he founded the group F64, devoted to the idea of pure photography or straight photography.
Music. Jazz, who comes from the blues, is one of the most important music movements of that era. Musicians such as Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington and Billie Holiday tore apart and rebuilt music the same way the modernist authors and artists did with conventions. Louis Armstrong was born in New Orleans in 1901 and started music at the age of 13 and later perfected the improvised jazz solo. He died in New York in 1971. Swing. Swinging means being in sync with other people and loving it. This music form first appeared during the Great Depression, but in contrary to the gloomy times, the music was optimistic and lifted the spirits. Duke Ellington was born in 1899 in Washington and started learning the piano at 7. He was a composer and a band leader. He died in 1974. Bebop. In the 1930s, jazz musicians wanted to explore new directions and created a new style of jazz, the bebop. This music form has fast tempos, intricate melodies and complex harmonies. Bebop was no longer for dancing audiences but for listening audiences. It was therefore seen as jazz for intellectuals. Dizzy Gillespie. He was born in 1917 in South Carolina. His father gave him music lessons. He later went to New York where he experimented with other musicians and came up with the bebop sound. He also added Latin American rhythms to modern jazz. He died in 1993. Cinema. Grapes of Wrath. The book, written by John Steinbeck, was made into a film as soon as 1930, a year after the book was released. In the film, we follow a family who loses its farm during the Great Depression in the 1930s. They become migrant workers and travel all the way from Oklahoma to California. The story of this family echoes the ones of other farmers who suffered from oppression imposed by the banks and big mechanized farm interests. By following this family, we have an insight into the thousands of families who were evicted and uprooted from their farmland and forced to search for jobs miles away. Chaplin. The Great Dictator and Modern Times. Chaplin was born in London but lived most of his life in America. Modern Times is a critique of a modern, industrialized world. This social protest film is set in the 1930s during the Great Depression era. The film's main concerns echo those of millions of people at the time: unemployment, poverty and hunger. Modern Times shows inventive scenes that show the struggle of the proletarian man against the dehumanizing effects of the machine in the industrial age. The Great Dictator, released in 1930, was Chaplin's first true sound film. In his political film, Chaplin condemns Adolf Hitler, Mussolini, fascism and anti-Semitism. We follow the story of a Jewish barber who leaves hospital after 20 years in a coma. He finds out that Tomania, his country, is now governed by Adenoid Hinkle, who looks like an identical twin of the barber. He has to escape, but is later mistaken for Hinkle. The message of the final speech, which lasts 8 minutes, is directly sent to the spectator.
The machine hearts You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate. The unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery. Fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man. Not one man nor a group of men, but in all men. In you. You, the people, have the power.
Architecture. The goal of the modernist architecture was to create new designs for the modern man. The modernist architecture rejected traditional styles and proposed a new type of functional design which used modern materials such as iron, steel and concrete and new construction techniques. Moreover, the modernist architecture favored simplified form. Given the importance of urban development following the economic recovery and the growth of numerous markets, it is logical that many modernist architecture involve large commercial buildings. Walter Gropius. Walter Gropius was a German-American architect who was born in 1883 and died in 1969. In 1937, he fled from Nazi Germany to the US. He used simple geometric forms, used modern materials like steel and glass, and played with primary colors and did not use romanticized ornamentation. For Gropius, all design should be functional yet aesthetically pleasing. He also designed furniture. Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright was born in Wisconsin in 1867 and died in 1959. His philosophy of architecture was the organic architecture which promotes harmony between human habitation and the natural world. It means that the building must be integrated with the site as well as the furniture.
This is the end.